Civ 7. Just a few days ago, the long-anticipated turn-based strategy game was finally released, and to say that some people didn't like it might be an understatement. Genuinely, every single person that opened the game gave their opinion. Some even gave 2. And if I'm being honest, I don't really know what they were expecting. I mean, for crying out loud, it's a 2K game. A company literally known for copying and pasting the same game year after year after year after year after year with a different African-American basketball players to cover. Like, come on, this one's on you. In all seriousness, Civ 7 really isn't that bad of a game. Don't get me wrong, I'm in no way a Civ sweat by any means. At most, I'll probably play around 100 hours before I inevitably give it up for another game that I've been waiting to release. Yet, in the time that I've currently played it, I've had a lot of fun. Of course, there are things I both like and dislike about the game, just like everything else, but you don't see me writing a hate letter to the developers about how much I hate their guts and want them to die, but that's just me. You do you. Also, something to keep in mind, I did not play the game while it was in that weird early access phase before it actually came out, because unlike you guppies, I felt zero need to spend $30 to $60 extra just to get a cosmetic pack in 5 days early access. So, just keep that in mind. Now, speaking of the developers, despite my prior hate towards 2K, Civ 7 was actually developed by a company known as Firaxis Games. Firaxis Games was founded in 1996 by none other than the man himself, Sid Meier, hence why all their games start with Sid Meier's. Anyways, when I tell you that my boy Sid was an absolute GOAT, I mean it in every way. In 1996, he won GameSpot's most influential person in video gaming of all time. A year later, in 1997, he won Computer Gaming World's most influential person of all time. And in 1999, he was the second ever inductee into the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences Video Game Hall of Fame. The awards literally don't stop. I mean, this dude was having a LeBron-type career, putting up numbers that nobody had ever seen before. He was winning countless awards and refused to retire, even having worked in the space for over 3 decades.
Come on, man! That's too easy!
I mean, Firaxis is responsible for creating all the Civ games, a bunch of XCOM games, and Marvel's Midnight Suns? Huh. Weird. On the other side, we have the publisher, 2K. We all know them, and we all hate them. I honestly don't even want to talk about them. That's how much I despise this company. They're just like EA. They come in, ruin a bunch of games, and penny pinch us for everything we're worth. And believe it or not, Civ 7 is a great example of this. Now, I don't know how many, if any of you actually looked at or read that small information thing about the Deluxe and Founders Edition, but if you look at the bottom at the almost unreadably small text, you can see something that reads, "The Crossroads of World Collector contains 6 DLCs. All scheduled to be released in March 2025. Let me read it again. All scheduled to be released in March 2025, less than a month after the game was released. If you're releasing DLC a month after the game came out, that isn't DLC. That's content that you willingly left out of the base game just to resell for a profit.
Give me your fucking money!
To me, something like that is completely inexcusable, but clearly the massively scummy company knows something I don't. God, that rant felt good. Fuck you, 2K. Since I've started playing Civ 7, I've heard just about every complaint under the sun. How they came up with 1 liter change Civ is beyond me. Each age is its own contained game, and if I wanted to play 3 separate games, I would. It won't stand the test of time unless they fix it real good. The UI is terrible. Civ is going backwards. Civ 5 was and still is the best. And those are only a few examples of what players are complaining about, but if I'm being honest, I don't really agree with most of the things they're saying. Before you go in the comments and start attacking me for having a different opinion than you, just remember I am a casual player. I will not sink hundreds of thousands of hours into this game like all you sweats. I just won't. So take a nice long look in the mirror and see what it says about you for hating on people who have a different opinion, fatty. Starting with the UI, this is easily the most complained about aspect of the game, and boy do people have some strong opinions about it.
The user interface, it's an absolute disaster. It's an absolute fucking disaster. I don't even know where to begin.
Honestly, I don't really have much of an issue with the UI. Disclaimer, the only other Civ game I've played was Civ 6, and I only have around 100 hours or so in it, so I don't really have any expectations coming into the game. As far as finding things, I had essentially 0 issues. The only time I actually struggled to find something in the UI was when I accidentally closed the resource screen and didn't know how to bring it back up. Newsflash, you just click the resource icon at the top. But I didn't feel like there were any actual issues that I couldn't just use my head to figure out.
What are we gonna do, Buzz?
Use your head.
But I don't want to use my head.
I didn't really struggle to find or understand anything that they were trying to tell me or show me. I don't know, maybe there's something that I just don't understand or know about the Civ games that explain why the UI is so bad. Sure, they could have done a better job representing things or at the very least explaining them, but to an essentially new player, it kind of just felt normal. Outside of the UI, most other complaints vary pretty heavily from person to person, with players being pretty divided on a lot of them. Things like leaders not being bound to their country and the different ages are probably the most common. As far as the leaders not being bound to their country, I'm not some weird history major or history teacher or any other history whatever, even though I'm pretty sure those are the only people who actually care a lot about history. So I really couldn't care less. If anything, I find it kind of cool that leaders aren't geographically bound. If I want Harriet Tubman to rule over ancient Rome, she can. Or if I want Napoleon to lead America, he can. It's really not such a big deal that people should be criticizing the game over it. The same goes for the 3 different ages. I honestly kind of like it. It adds a new layer of depth and strategy that just wasn't in the other games. Well, Civ 6 at least. The main complaint you see about the ages is people don't like that there is a soft reset during the game. But honestly, I think that's why it's a good thing. Back when I played Civ 6, my strategy was to just rush my main city and spam troops until I eventually conquered other leaders. This doesn't work because of the reset. Instead of mindlessly running through the game, you actually have to think for once, something I know you guppies can't do.
Think, Mark, think!
You have to balance the reset of the ages versus what you are currently doing. You have to decide if you can actually conquer another leader in time, or if your time is better spent rushing research and upgrading your cities. It adds a new layer of depth that honestly I think is a complete upgrade. Again, before you go to the comments section calling me a glazer, just like everyone else, there are things that I don't really like about the game. Okay, it's really just 2 things that I absolutely despise: narrative events and crisis events. Narrative events are literally the bane of my existence. Every time I see one, all I can think about is Reaper from Overwatch ulting. Die, die, die. Maybe I'm wrong and I just don't really understand the meaning or whatever, but they essentially have no purpose. Every time one pops up, I literally just click whatever the top option is and move on with my day. Sometimes they'll give me a small boost, other times they'll give me some stupid quest that I won't do. Like, they literally have no point. The same goes for crisis events. I get what they were trying to do. They were attempting to make the end of an era feel more stressful to help get you excited to enter the next era, but all it actually ended up achieving was being a complete inconvenience. Every time, without fail, it would do nothing but piss me off.
If I ever find one of these lying around again, I swear to fucking God, I will stop being so polite. Get the fuck out of my sight before I demolish you.
Of course, with everything, there are also things that are good about the game. Yes, believe it or not, you don't just have to focus on the negative parts. Games can also have good parts. While players are pretty up in arms about the game, there are still plenty of good and fun things about it. One of the main things that I see a lot of players like are the new commander units, and these guys are amazing. Essentially, they allow you to pack multiple different units into the commander and allow you to move and attack with them all at the same time. It's really just a minor change, but something that makes moving and attacking with troops so much less of a tedious thing. Another very good change is diplomacy. Again, I only played Civ 6, so I don't really have much information on how it used to work, but I can confidently say that it is incredibly easy to do now. Whether you want to outcast or befriend another civilization, all you have to do is essentially spam the same option over and over and over until they eventually either like you or don't. Kinda like how Trump does when he keeps saying the word China. It has the same effect.
China, 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 China.
Speaking of diplomacy, there have always been multiple different ways to win a game of Civ: military, science, and culture. However, Civ 7 introduced economic victory for the very first time, and it's exactly as it sounds. You just go through the ages completing quests to further your economic hold on trade and other civilizations. Essentially, you just end up controlling a part of their government because you have an insane amount of wealth. Wait, I feel like I've seen this before somewhere. Last but not least of the major things that I see a lot of players like is the fact that new and conquered settlements now start as towns instead of cities. Towns strictly use gold to build new areas and grow bigger. In turn, their production is then converted to gold, while towns are the complete opposite. They require turns played to upgrade, and production is directly linked to how fast something takes to complete. You also have the option to use gold to turn a town into a city, but that only matters later in the game in my opinion. Honestly, I agree with most players in the aspect of this being a good thing. I like having the choice of whether I want to keep something as a town in order to produce more money, or convert it into a city in an attempt to grow it quicker. It's another small level of depth that makes the game just that much more interesting. All in all, Civ 7 offers a lot of mixed experiences, but it also brings plenty of enjoyable changes to the table. Whether it's the new strategic layers like balancing town growth or the addition of being able to win through cold hard cash, there's definitely room to have fun. Sure, there are things that might need some tweaks and changes, but what game doesn't have stuff like that? And of course, you're always going to have players stuck in the past talking about how good times were during Civs 5 and 6, but one thing's for sure, the game still keeps you hooked with the classic Civ feeling. The feeling of needing to always play just one more turn. You might sit down for a quick session and before you know it, hours have passed and you're still playing, making moves, planning strategies, and diving into the deep world of civilization building. That's the magic of Civ. Whether it's perfect or not, it keeps you coming back, and maybe that's all you really need.